Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of DGS2 Case 4. We are on the main menu because we stopped at an actual to be continued, so if I had loaded up this file right here before I started the recording, we would just go right into it. So, we are heading into the first day of the trial, fighting against our best friend Asogi and defending Baroque, because that's just how Ace Attorney games work, right? We gotta defend our enemies, or our rivals, and stuff like that. Let's get to it. It's November 2nd, 8:56 a.m., the Old Bailey Defendant's Lobby. The air here in the Supreme Court feels crushingly heavy again today. I feel overwhelmed. No, that's not quite right. I kind of feel like today, my nerves are even more overwhelming than usual. Perhaps those nerves. Yeah. They're likely because of the stifling aura given off by this overwhelming defendant. Don't be rude. Says the guy who keeps calling Naruhodō Japanese boys for 2 games! We're so sorry. So sorry. But it does indeed seem that today's trial will be different from the norm. Different? How do you mean? I don't know all the details, however, I heard that no jurors were selected for today's trial. Trial without jurors? But that sounds just like the trial that the professor was given 10 years ago. A top secret trial, huh? Hey, good morning, folks! Home-san. Build, folks! My hair has returned to normal. Chalk up another victory for science. To be honest, so much happened yesterday that I had completely forgotten about that hair. Huh! It might just be that hair to you, but I gulped down so many suspicious chemicals trying to get it to change back to normal that I've been feeling nauseous all morning, folks. That's your own fault. Oh my, you poor thing. I can't think of any way to look at it that makes it anything other than your own fault. Exactly! Hey there, Reapy! Can't tell you how glad I am to see you looking so well today. You seem to be keeping busy yourself, famous detective. Oh, little old me? I should think that the 2 or 3 trifling cases I've solved is far less threatening to London's criminals than the mere existence of the Grim Reaper. I can't say I agree with all your methods per se, but I have to at least give you credit on one point. What an honor. And what point might that be? Your taste in defense attorneys. Home-san. After all, that defense attorney has me behind him. What do you mean by that? It means that you better prepare yourself, Reapy.
Excuse us.
Gina-san. That thing around her arm must be a sign of mourning, huh? But, Father, what about the symposium?
The symposium has been postponed, so I've suddenly got some free time in my schedule. I thought I'd accompany the inspector here to see the trial led by our country's exchange students. I'm looking forward to seeing the progress you've made over this past year.
Thank you very much. The progress I've made, huh?
Naruhodō.
Yes, Gina-san.
Why you to accept this guy's defense request. Hey, the Grim Reaper killed my boss. That's what everyone's saying.
I'm sorry, Gina-san. I don't think that's what happened.
Then who did?
I don't know yet.
They call him the Grim Reaper, but he's still just a normal human. Whoever killed my boss is gonna have to answer to me.
That look in your eyes. You go ahead and hate the murder from the depths of your heart, for Gregson's sake.
Huh?
That's the only comfort that can be offered to the dead.
Please, Naruhodō. Avenge my boss.
Gina-sama.
I hate to admit it, but there's nothing I can do. So, you gotta find the murderer and make sure they're caught.
Defendant! Defense! It's almost time for the trial to convene. Proceed to the courtroom immediately. It's finally time, huh? Let's be off. Bansik-sama, Naruhodō-sama. A man who had his beloved brother stolen from him by a serial killer. A man whose father was stolen from him by a foreign judicial system. A girl who lost a benefactor who gave her a future. The cause and effect of all that, and the sadness it's brought all comes together in this trial. This is the time to shine light into that darkness. No matter what facts are lurking there. We can't allow ourselves to avert our eyes from it. Deep breaths. Here we go. Day 1. There's just this sadness everywhere at the beginning of this. Same day, 9:20 a.m., the Old Bailey, Supreme Court. There he is, on the other side.
In the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I now declare court to be in session. For the just trial of the defendant, Baroque Van Zeeks. Allow me to ask the prosecution and defense. Are you both prepared to make your cases?
The defense is ready. He's got slightly new animations now because he doesn't have Karuma.
The prosecution is also ready.
Kazuma-sama. I've been waiting for the day when you'd return to the courtroom. But I never imagined it would be on the other side, at the prosecution's bench.
The Grim Reaper of Old Bailey. The deep darkness that the great British judicial system has been so far unable to penetrate. Perhaps in today's trial, we'll finally begin to explore that darkness.
In other words, this trial is intended to examine more than just the death of Detective Gregson.
I don't know what sort of influence the facts that come to light will have on the English judicial system. Therefore, this trial has been classified as top secret, and its proceedings will not be made public. This is a decree from Her Majesty the Queen.
A top secret trial.
All decisions pertaining to the trial will be made by the presiding judge. Therefore, today, we will have no one filling the jurors' seats.
Unpublicized? Then who are in the gallery?
Members of our nation's fair judicial system. They will be the observers in this trial.
Members of the judicial system? Everything about this trial is awfully unorthodox.
And there's one final factor that ought to make this trial incredibly fascinating. That is the fact that both the prosecution and defense are both foreigners.
There are some things that are easier to see as an outsider. That's what I believe. And now that I stand here, it's become clear to me that the reason I'm in this country is to prosecute this trial.
Asogi.
In that case, let the trial begin. Prosecutor Asogi, your opening statement.
Certainly, Your Honor. The murder occurred on November 1st, just after 5 p.m. The crime scene was outside of London, on the back alley of Fresno Street. The victim's body was discovered in the room of an old apartment building.
Detective Tobias Gregson. That's a name I know well. After all, he was the one who led that case 10 years ago to being solved.
The professor case. Are we certain about the time at which the murder occurred?
The testimonies of people out on the street who heard the gunshot all agreed on that point.
Sounds like Gina-san was right about there being witnesses.
Now then, I would like the court to take a look at this diagram of the crime scene. The victim was lying curled up in the corner of the room. He was shot head-on at point-blank range, and we can assume that he was killed instantly by the bullet.
And how do we know it was point blank?
There were traces of black burn marks around the victim's wound. These were clearly left by a gunpowder explosion. In order for a gunpowder explosion to leave traces, the barrel of the gun would need to have been fired at a point-blank range of no more than a few inches.
I see. The court understands the situation.
Autopsy report. Detective Gregson's autopsy report. Died instantly due to a bullet fired at point-blank range.
Additionally, the murder weapon, this pistol, was found lying next to the body.
Has the pistol's owner been identified?
No, they haven't.
That's Kazuma-sama for you. It seems as though he's determined to refrain from making assumptions without hard evidence.
Now then, as I was saying, the pistol was fired at a very close range to the victim. The bullet passed through the victim's body and hit the wall behind him. That wall had a candle holder fixed to it, and one of the candles in it was found to have had the end blown off.
We saw the candle holder as well, didn't we? We did.
I see. The court understands. The prosecution will submit that diagram as evidence.
As you wish.
Crime scene diagram. A diagram of the apartment on Fresno Street where Detective Gregson's body was discovered.
An apartment of Fresno Street. Was that Detective Gregson's residence?
No, Your Honor. The renter is a man by the name of Hugh Boone. The crime scene was a small, desolate room, with no substantial furniture.
What was Detective Gregson doing in a room like that? Perhaps he was investigating a case?
Those who heard the gunshot reported to the police. When the officers arrived on the scene, they found the detective's body, and the defendant standing over him, holding the pistol. The officers arrested the defendant on the spot.
The situation sounds abundantly clear.
In that case, the prosecution would like to call its first witness to the stand.
Who is this witness?
Naturally, it's the defendant himself.
You mean Lord Van Zeeks?
In spite of his flaws, he's a prosecutor. It's his duty to report his own actions correctly.
Very well, defendant. Take the stand.
Oh boy.
Now then, defendant, state your occupation and name.
Baroque Van Zeeks. I'm a prosecutor at Old Bailey.
Lord Van Zeeks, I'm sure you heard Prosecutor Sogi's opening statement.
Yes.
You were present at the crime scene when the murder occurred, and you were arrested by the officers who arrived at the scene. Are those statements correct?
They are correct.
In that case, defendant, let's hear what you have to say for yourself. Why were you on Fresno Street at the time of the murder? And what happened at the crime scene while you were there?
I feel like Asogi's trying to pull Baroque into a trap. I don't intend to just say anything. I only intend to state the truth.
Lord Van Zeeks, I never imagined that this day would come. No, I guess that's not quite right. Ever since you gained the nickname the Grim Reaper, I have expected that a day like this might come eventually. Now then, your testimony.
The truth regarding the murder. Here we go. I was investigating Gregson. That's when I discovered that room. When I arrived at that room that day, it was dark inside and I couldn't see anyone in there. That's when I heard a gunshot from within the room. I turned around and that's when I noticed the pistol on the floor. When I picked up the pistol, the door burst open violently and I heard a man scream. The next thing I knew, Detective Gregson's body was lying before me.
Was that testimony the so-called truth?
It was.
A gunshot rang out through the empty room. And the next thing you knew, the body just appeared in front of you. That's too weak to count as a statement, or even an excuse.
You were so quiet as my apprentice, and yet... That's quite a sharp tongue you have, Prosecutor Asogi.
It is indeed an incredibly strange situation.
It's less of an issue of being strange, and more of an issue of being illogical nonsense.
Asogi. What's going on with him? There's something about him today that seems off. He's on the road for revenge, man!
Very well. The defense may go ahead with its cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. I think we can actually go through this. We have time. 10 minutes. Let's do this. Soki's coded scene! Sorry! You were investigating Gregson. What for? I'm afraid I can't say.
What? Huh?
There was a possibility that that detective participated in a certain incident. However, before I could gain any decisive evidence, someone took his life.
So then, on the day of the murder, you followed the victim to the crime scene?
No, actually, I looked into his plans ahead of time. His plans? I infiltrated his office at the yard and looked through his investigation activity records. The time 5 p.m. and the address to the building on Fresno Street were recorded there.
Infiltrating a detective's office as a serious offense on its own in Japan.
Naturally, it's the same in our country. Isn't that right, Lord Van Zeeks?
I was fully aware of the repercussions.
Allow me to confirm once more, you were investigating the victim. However, you can't divulge the reason for that. Quite a self-serving testimony from the high and mighty English prosecutor.
Look at this cocky boy. He's only been an apprentice, and look at him. He's so smug. Ugh, I can't even dispute that. What a smug apprentice. By the way, had you ever been into that room before? Certainly not. It was only while I was conducting my investigation of that room that I learned of that room's existence. It was my time visiting the room, and there were no lights inside. I suppose you could say I couldn't see a thing. But at 5 p.m. during this season, the sun wouldn't have set yet. The windows of that room were boarded up, which blocked out the light. A small amount of light was able to enter through the cracks, but it was very dim. Even if the body had been there the whole time, I doubt I would have noticed.
So there was no light at the crime scene. Is that correct?
At the very least, the corner where the body was dark. However, I feel as though there might have been a small lamp on the desk which was lit.
Look at this, Naruhodō-sama. There is indeed a small desk.
Yeah, and it had a lamp and a standing picture frame on it, didn't it? I entered the room, shut the door, and headed over to the desk, intending to search it. Was there anything in the desk? I wasn't able to search it. I tried to make my way to the desk, but... A gunshot. And who fired it? I don't know. I didn't see anyone else in the room.
But it was dim in there, right?
Indeed it was, but... at the very least, I didn't sense that anyone was there.
What if... maybe you heard the gunshot from outside the room?
Impossible.
Huh?
The sound definitely came from within the room. I could smell the gunpowder as well. The more I hear, the less I understand.
And it was after that you noticed the pistol on the floor, correct?
The fact that I picked it up without thinking was a failure on my part as a prosecutor.
In other words, the gunshot you heard was the sound of the pistol being fired.
That wasn't the case.
Huh?
The gun was stone cold when I picked it up, and didn't smell of gunpowder.
So then, what happened to the pistol that was fired?
I apologize deeply, but... I'd like to know that myself.
What the heck happened?
A man. Was that one of the witnesses?
Precisely. He was one of the Fresno Street vendors.
And who was it?
On the street directly below the crime scene was a line of peddlers selling their wares. A match seller, an intelligence vendor, and an advertiser. They heard the gunshot and instinctively rushed to the scene. That's what they testified.
I believe Gina-sama said that very thing yesterday.
Blech.
Apparently, they burst in on the crime scene with such vigor that they nearly broke down the door.
To be honest, I thought my heart was going to stop. Even though he's the Grim Reaper. The man saw the pistol in my hand and dashed off again at once.
And the officers patrolling Fresno Street heard the commotion and arrested the defendant at the crime scene immediately after the murder occurred.
In any case, I was startled by the man screamed and looked reflexively in his direction. This is such a vague testimony, even from Baroque. What do you mean, the next thing you knew? I don't understand it clearly myself. However, it's the truth. Suddenly the body, which I'm sure wasn't there before, was just lying there on the floor, dead. When that happened, did you hear the sound of the victim collapsing or anything? The only thing I heard at the time was the sound of the door bursting open and the scream of the man who entered. I see. After the man who screamed fled, I examined the body. As hard as it was to believe, it was Gregson's body.
Huh. A most curious set of circumstances.
As for how he was killed or where he was before I noticed him, I'm afraid I don't know.
Surely, we've heard enough. As you've just heard, Your Honor, one thing has become clear thanks to this cross-examination. And that the defendant, Baroque Van Zieks, has told multiple lies.
What?
What do you mean? What lies has the defendant told?
Oh, his theme.
The defendant just testified the following. The room, the crime scene, was dark, so I didn't notice the body.
That's the truth.
However, that's impossible. This candle holder testifies to that.
What do you mean?
If you look at the end of what remains of the long candle, you can tell that was broken off by a strong impact.
It was likely hit by the bullet after it had passed through the victim's body.
The problem is that its length is obviously different from the other two candles.
That's true. The broken candle is the only one that's that long.
When lighting candles on a candle holder, one typically lights them all at the same time. So then, what would cause only one of them to be long?
Well, obviously it would have to, because just that one ran out before the others.
Exactly. When the bullet hit the candle, it was the only one that was put out. The other two candles remain lit, which means that the victim's body should have been visible by the light of the other two candles. Your claim that you couldn't see the body is a contradiction. And you told one other lie.
There's more?
The defendant testified that he'd never been to the crime scene before.
That's also the truth.
Something strange was discovered at the nearly furnitureless crime scene. One of the walls was plastered with police investigative materials and newspaper articles.
That's true. We examined it during our investigation of the crime scene yesterday as well.
Naturally, the police investigative materials shouldn't have been allowed out of the records room. However, the fact remains that there were case records from various dates. The oldest one was from 10 years ago.
"10 years ago. Also, holy crap, Asogi is so aggressive. He's just going all in.
And all the cases with records posted there have a certain commonality.
Huh? And what might that commonality be?
They were all cases prosecuted by Baroque Van Zeeks.
What? By Prosecutor Van Zeeks?
And all those cases received not guilty verdicts, leading to the release of the defendants.
What?
Incidentally, none of those released defendants are still living. And that's because the Grim Reaper came for them, and saw them off to the afterlife.
It can't be.
In other words, that room was none other than the Grim Reaper's hideout and his base of operations.
Holy crap, Asogi. Like, compared to Baroque, who just kind of like, he kind of just waits and listens, but also like chooses when to pick his fights. Asogi's just going all in, like immediately. Like, I love that, like the difference between how Baroque and Asogi prosecute. Like, Baroque is pretty like pick his fights, but Asogi's like, I'm all in right now, throwing all my chips. Backwards. Wait, which one is this? Oh, wait. The Grim Reaper's hideout. Oops, excuse me, sorry. I'm like losing my lines here.
And you expect us to believe that the Grim Reaper himself had never been to the Grim Reaper's hideout?
I went too far ahead.
That's unthinkable. You've got it all backwards.
Backwards? How so?
Detective Gregson was investigating the identity of the Grim Reaper. That's when he located that hideout. That's why he was killed. Yes, by none other than the Grim Reaper.
Holy shit! That argument! What am I supposed to pick from that? There was just like so much information!
Order! 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 Very well. Allow the court to state its opinion on the proceedings thus far. Lord Baroque Van Zeeks is an outstanding prosecutor and the pride of the great British Empire. However, unfortunately his testimony does not make sense. And Prosecutor Asogi has revealed several contradictions within it.
All I am guilty of is stating the facts as I know them. That's Asogi Kazuma for you. A prosecutor who's intimately familiar with defense tactics makes for an intimidating opponent. No shit!
Prosecutor Asogi, kindly submit the bulletin board you showed earlier into evidence. The court believes it will be vital evidence in proving the existence of the Grim Reaper.
Thank you very much, Your Honor.
Bulletin board. Case records of all victims taken care of by the Grim Reaper are plastered all over it.
Now then, the prosecution would like to call some new witnesses to the stand. These witnesses actually witnessed the murder with their own eyes.
were mentioned in the previous testimony as well, weren't they? Yes, the man who rushed to the crime scene upon hearing the gunshot.
In that case, escort the witnesses to the stand. The defendant may stand down.
As you wish. Oh, shit! Uh-oh. I didn't mean to do that! I should have stopped right there. I thought, like, well, we'll stop here as soon as Asogi says his line. Whoopsies.
Now then, witnesses, please state your occupations and names for the court.
Okay, sorry, I should have stopped at the part where Baroque said as you wish before it, like, faded black and we saw the witnesses. But we will stop here. We're way over time, but I didn't want to stop in the middle of Asogi's long, aggressive attack on the defense. Holy shit. And we'll continue and talk to these witnesses in the next video. See you guys then.
No, Your Honor. The Renner is a man by the name of Huge Boner. Damn it.